Desensitization and counterconditioning are probably two of the most important concepts you should understand if you are lucky enough to share your life with a dog. It is super helpful for puppies, for dogs with fears, anxiety, aggression, for medical procedures, and many other things. Jose from Train Me Please here, let's go! Okay, I've got a lot of good content for you today. Let's start with a couple of definitions. Desensitization is the slow and progressive presentation of anything that would typically create an unwanted response, but at such low level that the negative response does not occur. Counterconditioning is a process that changes the perceived emotional response towards a certain thing or situation. The new conditioned response is incompatible with the previous one. Now, let's unpack this in a way that gives us some tools to use in real life with our dogs. When we are using desensitization, we are slowly and progressively getting the dog habituated to the problematic thing, such as the mailman. We can start by getting the dog in a comfortable and relaxed situation and then introduce the desired thing at a very low level. For example, seeing the mailman from a very long distance. If the dog does not even notice the mailman, you repeat the previous step, but this time you increase the intensity of the stimulus, such as the proximity of the mailman, very slightly. If the dog notices the mailman but does not react, we should stay at this level a little longer. When the dog stops noticing the mailman, we can decrease that distance again. If the dog reacts to the mailman, we need to reduce the intensity of the trigger, which means moving the mailman further away. Now, yes, to do this you will need someone to help you and play the role of the mailman. Also, you can replace mailman for anything else here that applies to your dog. Children, bicycles, other dogs, etc. Here's another example. Let's assume that your dog shows some barking and lunging when he sees other dogs at a certain distance. We can start by exposing the dog to other dogs from a very long distance. If there is enough distance, eventually the dog will learn to ignore the other dog. Over a few days or even weeks, we can slowly decrease that distance. We monitor the dog to see when he stops paying attention to the other dog and use that as a guide to decrease the distance. Desensitization is not perfect, however. It relies on a no response from the dog, which makes it fairly possible to have a reversal if an unexpected high-intensity exposure to the scary thing happens. In this case, it could be another dog very close, or showing up very suddenly. This is why I almost always use it in association with counterconditioning. It will make the process faster, more efficient, and definitely more fun. Desensitization alone is like driving on the freeway stuck in third gear. The car is moving, but, sort of slowly and not really as it should. When you add counterconditioning, it's like finding a few extra gears for the car. Now, counterconditioning. This procedure is super helpful with anxieties, fears, escape-related behaviors, and aggression. When well implemented, a counterconditioning program will change how the dog feels. For example, if the dog is afraid of the mailman, we can put a few things in place so that the dog starts to have different feelings towards him. We can create a positive emotional response to the mailman. This is done by pairing the problematic or scary thing, in this case the mailman, with something that the dog really likes. This could be verbal encouragement, a fun game, or food treats. So, we could have the mailman showing up and the dog getting some delicious treats. Food reinforcers are a fabulous option here because they are powerful, easy to use, and offer lots of repetition potential. With that said, a combination of direct food delivery, sniffing the floor to find some treats, and play might be super helpful for you and your dog. Eating or playing are enjoyable activities for the dog, which are incompatible with fear or anxiety. If the pleasurable feeling of playing or eating is strong enough, the dog will replace the old negative feelings with these new, more enjoyable ones. It is important to mention here that in counterconditioning, we are not expecting a certain response from the dog. Mailman shows up, dog gets a cookie regardless of what the dog is doing. Whenever possible, it is highly beneficial to have desensitization associated with counterconditioning. If you were to use counterconditioning alone, because, let's say, you could not decrease the intensity of the scary thing, it would only work if the reinforcer was incredibly powerful. So we should try to use it in combination with desensitization whenever possible. Painful veterinary procedures can benefit a lot from a good desensitization and counterconditioning program. The best piece of information is still to come, but first it is now time to offer me some positive reinforcement by hitting the like button under the video. Go on, I'll wait a second. Here's a cute photo of a dog as a thank you. Rushing the counterconditioning process can have a negative impact on its progress. For example, if we ask a stranger to hand feed our dog in an attempt to make him less fearful of people, we might very well make our dog afraid of receiving food. This can happen if the fear of proximity to the stranger is stronger than the positive reaction to the food. Confession: I am a bit guilty of that one actually. Many years ago, that is something that I would do. I suppose we all should embrace the philosophy of lifelong learning, and I have certainly learned a lot of stuff over the years and will continue in the years to come. It is much more advisable to start the counterconditioning process with a fair amount of distance so that the perceived fear by the dog is way less intense. At a later stage, we can consider having the stranger or our helper person drop some delicious treats on the floor without looking or touching the dog. This puts less pressure on the dog and is much less intense than going straight into hand feeding from the other person. So, to tie it all up nicely and combine both procedures, let's go back to our mailman example. We can have the dog seeing the mailman from a distance and getting some reinforcers. That distance can be slowly decreased and the dog continues to get some reinforcers regardless of what she might be doing. Eventually, the dog will totally change her feelings towards the mailman. After doing this initially for a little while, we can move to a differential reinforcement strategy, and my two favorite games for this are the Engage, Disengage game and the Look at That game. And they are right here, so go check them out. I will leave some additional information and resources in the description under the video. Obrigado pelo apoio, pessoal. Até à próxima!